Hello, my friends. Rich Whitehouse here, and the time has finally come to demonstrate my Killer Instinct emulator. And I have been absolutely murdering myself on this thing over the last month or so, and it has turned out real nice. I've developed a new training mechanism to drive the interpreter and achieve what I think are heretofore unheard of speeds for this kind of thing. And I'm just going to walk through some of the features here. In particular, I'm making this video for the post-release stage where people don't understand how the hell to do anything. So I want to have something to direct them to kind of explain some of the features. So if you use BigPimu, you'll immediately recognize the interface. It's identical. I considered changing the fonts, but I couldn't betray my sweet mistress Ariel. So um, let's see here. So NetPlay is something I think a lot of people are going to want to make use of in this thing because in my testing, and mind you, my testing's been limited. I've played maybe 30 minutes with one friend, the only friend who's actually had access to this thing, and it performed beautifully. There was not a single hitch, um, and I like, it's pretty hard to come by emulated NetPlay that runs this good, I gotta say. And not just tuning my own horn there, it actually is like really exceptionally good. And there's a rollback window of 16 frames, which is also generally unheard of because that would be extremely computationally expensive normally. And if it actually has to go back the full 16 frames, 16 times 16.6 milliseconds is a really high ping time. Even a beefy machine is going to have trouble with it at that stage. But if you do have such a high ping time or like such a inferior CPU that you're actually having problems there, you can increase the state sync delay. And keep in mind that actually, as long as network rewind is enabled, there is zero delay locally. So one means zero basically. If you have it disabled, then yeah, that's the actual value and then the delay of frames. But you can also stack this with rewind, so you can artificially induce some amount of latency. And these settings, both rewind and the delay, are synchronized from the host. So no matter what the other client has it set at, the host is going to drive this, which makes sense because you want everybody to have the same delay. It generally wouldn't be very fair, but well, it also wouldn't really work without rewind, because then you have to synchronize back and forth. It just wouldn't really work. But anyway, um, I think most people will probably not have to set this at all, even with like 200, 300 millisecond ping times, inducing like I think like 5 to 10% packet loss and 200, 300 ping time was my own like baseline for local testing because I'm artificially inducing latency, and it runs beautifully in that circumstance. And when you have ping times as high as 300 milliseconds, yeah, you can actually visibly see see the pop when the other player changes their input, but there's absolutely no stutter, no break in audio, nothing like that. So it's really nice, and I hope people enjoy it. But the thing that still sucks is I haven't actually integrated a multiplayer platform because Valve are being some really terrible human beings. Genuinely the worst developer support I've ever worked with, and I've worked with everybody at this point. Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, Apple. Valve is so much worse in so many ways. So I was hoping to have Steam integration for both Big Pimu and potentially this, but they have denied me for really stupid reasons. They won't actually elaborate on their objections to like IP uses and stuff like that. And everything that I use generally is covered under either by fair use, or in the Jaguar's case, there's some ambiguity because you have Hasbro claiming they released all rights to the Jaguar basically, but now I don't think that really legally holds water. So I'm actually talking with Atari about that right now, but that's not really the point of this video. But anyway, Valve are terrible, and so I'm still using like bare bones, no actual multiplayer integration. And before you suggested, yes, I know there are alternatives, and I'm looking into them. I'm considering good old games integration because I understand that they run their own relay servers, and I already looked into doing my own punch through solution. And that would be great if IPv6 were actually adopted, which it is not, because I guess everybody's terrible. And like even my own router that I bought like a year ago still has IPv6 disabled by default, which is, my God, how shameful. But anyway, so you gotta do it old school. Sorry, so you go in here, you punch in your friend's IP address, and then you connect. And of course, because this is straight up IPv4 connectivity, you've got to make sure whoever's hosting actually has this route forwarded, or that this port forwarded on their router or whatever, because nobody's not behind a router these days, and generally routers are going to require you to explicitly forward a port when you're using connections like this. So you got to do that. Sorry, that's just life for now. Future releases will probably, hopefully, have some kind of platform integration that will just handle this stuff in terms of matchmaking, and I'll have, public servers and all that, which I don't know how that would go, but so that I think covers the networking portion of things. And then we have all this other stuff is pretty identical to BigPmu. There are some options in here, so if you want to absolutely minimize input latency, I've added some options for that, and of course these will be in the next BigPmu as well. It didn't make sense to implement them for one and not the other. So you can force synchronization with the GPU. By default, that's disabled because this would cause problems on a lot of systems that aren't well optimized or that have like shitty GPUs or shitty drivers or whatever. But if you're confident that your GPU is going to be super responsive and be able to operate in the same 16.6 milliseconds as the CPU with no trouble, you can do this, and this will potentially reduce your input latency. And we have, let's see here, the normal set of screen effects. You can see I've even I copied over the Alien versus Predator effects that my friend made. That's not in the actual release, but same effects as BigPmu. So you got this this shader that I appropriated from RetroArch at some point. Oh, it's taking its sweet time loading here. That's weird. There it goes. And usual stuff. I'm not going to bother going through all of it. So there's that, and this is all the same as BigPmu. And again, I've got plenty of documentation for BigPmu. I'm not writing documentation for this thing initially, so if you have trouble with it or you want to understand the functionality and features, check out the BigPmu user manual. Most of that documentation will still be relevant here. The stuff that is more Killer Instinct specific is generally at the bottom of the system menu. Oh, and I have added, this is like the view style run ahead that people are generally familiar with, this emulator run ahead setting. And for Killer Instinct, because Killer Instinct itself is double buffered, I think that you can safely set this to 1 and basically reclaim 16.6 milliseconds of input latency. So that's also a nice thing to have available to you if you're really trying to absolutely minimize input latency. If you have one of those insane, ridiculous setups that take special care to, like, use a custom driver to eliminate as much input polling overhead as possible, uses a high frequency display, does all that stuff, it's possible that you could get latency as good as or as low as arcade hardware. I haven't actually measured the hardware yet. I'm hoping to go up to Phoenix to do that this weekend, actually. And I'm going to be bringing an oscilloscope and doing a bunch of other measurements, getting a bunch of data that I can bring back and analyze, and basically plug in the numbers to make this thing as accurate as possible. But anyway, since I don't have those numbers, I can't make the claim, but it's possible. It's possible that you could get some impressively low input latency with that. Then you got the dip switches, which if you're not familiar with that, you can actually just look at the original Killer Instinct arcade manual for 1 or 2. Then we've got some Killer Instinct specific options. There's an option to run at 60 hertz or 58 point whatever hertz. The whatever part is also something I'm going to be measuring this weekend. So you can toggle between arcade and modern timing. And you can also overclock the MIPS chip. think I've actually got a save state here to demonstrate that. If you look here, no, there's a very slight slowdown when that particle hits, and that's also the kind of slowdown that you will see on real arcade hardware. And so let's overclock it to two times. And that actually feels rather unnatural if if you're used to the normal timing of the game. Yeah, as you can see, absolutely no slowdown from particles or anything when you overclock it. And you know, some people might prefer to play it that way. It's certainly an interesting experience. And then we have randomization on boot, because if you notice, like other emulators, when they boot up, if you go straight into single player, they'll always give you the same lineup of opponents, because the game chooses a random number based on cycles while it's booting up. And so if you don't introduce a little bit of randomness in there, you'll always get the same thing, unlike real hardware, which has a little bit of discrepancy and will give you different timings. And so I added this option to allow you to explicitly do that if you want to, or you can just leave it and whatever. But obviously this doesn't change the actual deterministic state of the thing. It just sets a seed that is then preserved, and of course it still works with netplay and everything. And there's also an option to preserve the interpreter cache, and really, in my experience, even when the interpreter encounters a code block and has to do its fancy matching, which is part of my patented dick training technology, by the way, I've come up with this really elaborate solution to train an interpreter, well, not the interpreter itself, but to create an offline data set that considers a whole wide array of things, from like common compiler trends for a given software library, common code blocks and permutations of those code blocks, and does all kinds of fancy understanding and comparison to figure out, like, okay, this is a common code block that's used with these registers, this is a common code block that's used with these registers with these masks and patterns, and does all kinds of fancy matching and to figure out the optimal block configuration, even for software that's like a very broad in nature, because generally, you've got a given software library. There are a finite number of compilers targeting that library, and so you end up with a lot of patterns. And if you have software to analyze and understand those patterns, you can do some pretty impressive stuff in the realm of performance without any kind of per title labor, no dynarec. And I wouldn't really call it AOT, because it's not ahead of time compiling the game code itself. It's ahead of time generating a massive set of code blocks that are designed to best handle lots of different groups of opcodes and lots of different circumstances. That's kind of my secret sauce, but I'm not going to give you the secret sauce of the actual implementation, because that's the real fancy smart part. But that's kind of the gist of it. And so the first time the interpreter encounters a block, and in this case, I've got different types of training that I can do on different types of code, different either like more generalized or very title specific. And so I'm releasing Killer Instinct in kind of a hybrid state, which is fairly title specific, but not entirely. So it still has to do quite a bit of labor once it encounters a block for the first time, and basically matches code to a given block to figure, or a given series of blocks, I should say, to figure out what the best I guess grouping is at runtime. So there's a bit of work there, but really, because that only happens the first time a code block is encountered, I haven't seen a circumstance where it adds more than like half a millisecond to a given frame ever. And then, of course, every subsequent frame is, that half a millisecond is no longer present. So it's pretty unobservable. It's not like you see, it's not like the shader cache type stuff where you actually see visible hitches when something is first encountered. This is pretty indiscernible, but I figured, what the hell, he's still got an option to enable that cache, so that even the first time running the game you encounter a block, it's already known by the interpreter that what it should do with that block, basically. And that still gets invalidated if the code gets written to, which happens a lot in some games and some systems, but Killer Instinct almost never writes to RAM, so it's not really a consideration. Let's see what else we got here. And this right here, in my demented mind, is the crown jewel of the simulator. I have I have implemented stereo audio, and those of you familiar with Killer Instinct 1 and 2 will realize that the arcade, the original software, only had monophonic audio, and so implementing this was actually quite an undertaking, and I did some really interesting things to pull it off. And so I've got the stereo script, and there are a few options which I will demonstrate to you here. So normally, and keep in mind that Killer Instinct actually has 3D camera coordinates and 3D character coordinates, even for those stages where everything is pre-rendered and it's just scrolling pre-rendered graphics. It still is using actual spatially correct 3D camera data. And so by default, with this pan scale of 1, you will be getting an actual, calculated panning, whatever the spatial audio algorithm of choice is. You'll be getting correct, results based on where those characters are and where the camera is. And so for demonstrative purposes, I'm going to crank up the pan scale, which basically exaggerates panning from the sounds left to right of the camera. And I'll show you here. Set my save state back. Now listen to my endokukins here specifically, and you'll see or hear. And so you can see excuse me. Orchid and Jago's sounds are coming from the left and right. And we've also got this option for what I called mono surround, and this is an old trick that a lot of mod trackers and stuff used back in the day, where you can take a mono channel right to two stereo channels and invert one of them, and it kind of tricks your brain into giving you the sensation that the sound is coming from all around you. And so compare the music now to the music when I just showed you. So there's that. And I've also got an attenuation option. So by default, 0 attenuation means, of course, no attenuation. And it's from a range of 0 to 40. So let's choose 20 here, mid-range. And you will hear that as the camera gets closer, so do my endokukins this time. Oh, it's fucking. I missed that uppercut because of this damn shitty controller. I'm blaming it on the controller. Anyway, so there's all that. Pretty awesome, and of course, everything in the simulator that I just showed you works with both Killer Instinct 1 and 2, and that includes the stereo script. So I don't remember what save states I might have here. Oh. Oh. I'm really fucking up here, sorry. Oh. Jeez. I'm really... Again, I apologize for my terrible skills. I should have taken the Ultra. Yeah, I fucked that up. But anyway, so you can see that you know, all this stuff still works for Killer Instinct 2, which I'm also much worse at. And yeah, I mean, like I think that that's about the sum of it. And like I said, there's, if you're not familiar with Big Pimu, there's a whole shitload of functionality of simulator that you can acquaint yourself with. And trying to think if I missed anything in terms of potential input latency reduction techniques. I think I covered everything. Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of different options. Oh yeah. There's also the thread run ahead option, and so this basically allows the emulator to run ahead of the rendering thread, and if there's like a hitch or something in the emulation, then there's more time for that to be covered up by basically double buffering the emulation itself. So you can set that, and that's the opposite of giving you more input latency. But if you have a system that's really struggling to keep up for whatever reason, because maybe there's something wrong with the thing or there's stuff going on in the background, that's an option. But if you want to absolutely minimize input latency, set that to none. And I debate on what to default this to, because so many systems in the wild really are really bad at running stuff no matter how optimized it is. And so having excuse me, having a lot of problems with my throat the past couple of days. But anyway, the more there are a lot of systems in the wild basically that have a lot of problems running stuff steadily, even if it's having, like, you know, 1 to 2 millisecond frame times. And so I debate on what to default this to, because people will often blame the software. They're like, "Oh, it's hitching all the time." It's like, no, actually, your computer's fucked up, dude. But people who don't have messed up machines will be able to set this to none safely and get consistently good frame times. And yeah, I think that's about it. Let's have a shot at Jago one more time and see if I fuck up as bad this time. Oh, I kind of redeemed myself there. There we go. Now we're getting it. Stop blocking. Oh shit. Oh, I thought I was gonna have that. Oh, the computer's just fighting me. No. Alright, I'm not even going for the Ultra. I was trying to get it in there. Alright. Drown in your watery grave, Jago. Alright, so I think that about covers everything. And yeah, I'm going to be releasing this to my patrons, I think probably sometime next week after I get done with my trip to Phoenix and plug in all the relevant data. And longer term, I'll probably be developing like an audio filter or something based on the data that I collect from actual hardware as well. But obviously the initial beta release, I'm not going to have time to do that, so it's going to go out without any extra Killer Instinct audio options. But that's no worse than anything else out there. I don't think anybody's done the research to, well, as perfectly as possible, match the appropriate buckets and frequencies and everything of actual hardware. So yeah, there's that. Please enjoy, and hopefully this video gives everybody what they need to know to use this thing effectively without insulting me or or shitting on me behind my back, as tends to be the trend with people in certain communities. Which that's an interesting one, because the Jaguar community gets such a bad rap, but those guys have been so much nicer to me and so much more polite than anybody. Well, not anybody, but like a lot of people that that this thing has gotten the attention of, and I guess that speaks to demographics and such. But hey, I'm a Killer Instinct fan, so we're not all bad. But yeah, now that I've insulted part of my fan base, that's I think that's a wrap. So thanks everybody, and I hope you enjoy. And um, obviously this is only going to my patrons initially. At some point, I'll probably open it up to the greater public, maybe after some number of releases. But in the meantime, it's going to be totally on the honor system. I'm not going to do any kind of fancy DRM or like OAuth authentication bullshit or anything like that. So there will, of course, I'm sure, be people who sign up just to get the thing and then distribute it on the internet because they're assholes and don't care that some guy just invested like a solid month of labor into this thing, like full-time labor. They're just like, fuck that guy. That's people. But hopefully, please don't do that if you can help it and if you can prevent people from doing it, or be like, hey, maybe you should support this guy a bit. Please do. I don't actually have any contracts or anything going right now, so this has been my complete focus for the last month, and I've definitely enjoyed doing it. But I mean, fuck, it's work, man. It's hard, and I think I'm gonna get more out of it. I think I'm gonna be able to reuse like that whole training system for a lot of stuff, and hopefully, um, I'm optimistic right now. Well, not optimistic long term, but I feel much better right now than I felt on the health front in a long time, because these past 2 months I haven't had a single bout of acute pancreatitis, and hell, you can probably even see it in my demeanor and my energy. I'm able to actually use my brain and focus right now, which has become a rarity. Like, I haven't had this level of clarity and lack of brain fog and lack of like disability since last June or so. And I've still got chronic pain in the pancreas, chronic pancreatitis, all kinds of weird shit. Like I had a fever of 103 just randomly one day the other week with intense inflammation in all my joints. All kinds of stuff that the rheumatologist can't diagnose because medical science sucks way more than we like to acknowledge. But still, by contrast, I am feeling very capable. So I'm hoping that I actually will have the opportunity to reuse a lot of this stuff in upcoming projects, and I'm working like a madman on stuff right now just because I can, and I don't know when that's going to end. So, yeah. But anyway, thanks again. I'll see you guys later. Oh, and if anybody does have like trouble or questions or whatever, find me on Discord. Look at the Big Pimu website. The Discord link is in the contact section. Um, and if like, please, like, don't link me to people shitting on me on Reddit and stuff like that. I know there are idiots out there who don't understand what 1.3 millisecond frame times equate to in performance, and I know people are assholes. You don't have to explicitly bring them to my attention. But yeah, otherwise, if you're not going to be an asshole and you just genuinely need some help or you've got some questions or you want to thank me or whatever, please find me on Discord. All right, now that's a wrap. I'll see you later.